Om Shanti and a very good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Brahma Kumari's regular Friday talk collaboration between Leicester and Harrow. And today's topic is the art of leadership skills. And today we have two very well qualified people to share their experiences on leadership. And we have Sanjay Tulsidas and Mahesh Patel, both are trustees of the Brahma Kumari's World Spiritual University here in the UK, and both are chartered accountants, and both are you can say businessmen. And Mahesh has a chain of care homes. So I think we are in for a wonderful evening today. So welcome, Sanjay. How's your day been?
Thank you. Oh, it's been great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for asking. Very eventful. Had plenty of meetings, and thought it would be good to be able to come in here and share with the rest.
Okay. Thank you. Well, you look very relaxed, I must say. Mahesh Bhai, if I can just ask you to unmute yourself, please. Great. So how was your day, Mahesh Bhai?
My day has been good. It's been raining outside, but otherwise it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. I've been following the cricket, so I really didn't want rain, but Nottingham is just up the road from Leicester, so that's something that I'm following. And in a competition like that, there's plenty of leaderships emerging. Sanjay, you've been a chartered accountant for some times, and you must come into a lot of people who play the role of a leader. Could you define what is a leader?
There's many ways of defining a leader. There's leaders in every environment. I'm more exposed to it within the sector or businesses, or even at home, or even in any environment you're in. But generally, a leader is somebody who leads. But there's many types of leading. There's some people who lead by example. There's some people who lead by what you call transactional leading on one-by-one basis. There are motivational leaders, many types. And the one which for me is closest to my heart, I'd say, are those who lead by example. And I would say one of the person we all know very well, is very well known, is Mahatma Gandhi. And a very interesting, a little example which somebody gave me about Mahatma Gandhi. When somebody asked, one lady brought their child to Mahatma Gandhi and said, I would like you to tell my child to stop eating honey because they eat too much honey. And Mahatma Gandhi said, come back after a week. Why after the week? Okay. Well, the lady went, took their child away, came back after a week. And Mahatma Gandhi then told the child, honey, too much of it is not good for you. And the mother then asked Mahatma Ji, said, why did you not tell the same thing a week ago? You could have just said it. Said, I was eating honey every day myself. So as a leader, he wanted to make sure he does it, as you say, walk the talk, and then he could say to that person very confidently. So that's the type of leadership which I generally go for.
Sanjay, how would you describe yourself then? Are you you lead by example?
I try to. I try to. It's the intentions is to make sure that whatever I talk about, whatever I preach, I try and practice it. And I'm exposed to a lot of leadership roles, whether it's with my clients, whether it's at the Brahma Kumaris. Being a trustee, you have to lead by example. The Brahma Kumari is a value-based organization, and the values has to match what we talk about. And so yes, I do try my best, and it's up to people to decide on that, not me.
Mahesh, now you run a sort of chain of care homes, and you must play a very substantial role, especially where people look up to you as the chief executive. So how would you describe your leadership role?
You see, it's very easy to say leadership role is to lead, but I think you need the right people around you. So long as you have the right ingredients, then the things work well. So I think my philosophy has always been that you need the right people around you to succeed. You need the right ingredients for it to succeed. And the skills we have is let you create leaders within the organization who lead from the front. And so long as I am involved and work hard and live by example, the people below me do the same. All my staff, we have nearly 4,000 staff working for us.
Wow.
And the deal is any of them can talk to me. It's not as if I'm the chief executive and the rest of them are right at the bottom. On the leadership front, so long as you have the right mix, it works well. So long as you're straightforward and you look forward to progressing the business, then it works well. If you were to sit and do very little, then it was going to run down the system, and eventually it's going to collapse. So my leadership is very casual, but very effective. I work with them and I talk their talk. And as Sanjay said, if you do that, then you will have the respect. Most of our senior management has been with us for over 25 years.
It seems like you've got a very stable environment. So obviously then people must be very comfortable with your style of leadership.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise they wouldn't be working for us. I also think that they are well rewarded for what they do. There's also, we have enough involvement to make it successful. We are pretty straightforward with our staff, and it seems to work.
It seems like you've come across that you need to be very clear, very transparent, very approachable. So what would be the sort of defining qualities of someone who plays the role of a leader?
If you look at any leaders around, they have always been leading from the front. Sanjay gave an example of Mahatma Gandhi. Another one is Nelson Mandela, is that when he was in prison, he didn't think that he'd come out and then destabilize the system. He actually came out and made the system even stronger, that to forgive and forget and reconciliation. And he actually made quite a good success in South Africa. Before he went to prison, it was like a white country, white ruled country. When he came out, it became a rainbow country. So he did not sort of isolate people. And I think if you have inclusive and authentic with what you do, inspire others to do what you want, and you are progressive and thinking forward, then that's what they're looking for. It's not always about money. Money follows if the business is successful.
I think sometimes when people talk about leadership, they tend to think about very high level, prime minister or a chief executive, leading a company or an organization. But Sanjay, people lead at a very sort of local level. What was the first time? When was the first time that you found yourself playing a leadership role?
Oh, wow. You're taking me back in the memory lane now. I would say probably back at school, I can't remember so much about school, but at university, there were loads of opportunities where you had a chance to lead. And I remember there was some assignment that we were given. And that was when I was at Deloitte & Touche, and I was qualified. I qualified with them as a chartered accountant. And there were they had their week away when we first joined, and to understand each other and really teach you a little bit about management and leadership. And they put us into a role-playing exercise where we had a task to do at the end of the week. And some of them were very hard, like crossing a river using a rope, and you had a team and you had to go across that river without getting wet. And we had trees around, we had rope, we had various stuff, and we had different groups. And they just let the natural leader emerge. They didn't say that you're the leader and you're leading this group. And so I just naturally just sort of, just the way I was trying, I wasn't trying to be bossy or anything like that, but just try to understand the task, understand what's in front of us, have a very clear vision of what we wanted to achieve. Our task was to get from A to B, but in a way where everybody is included. That's very important. You cannot leave anybody out of it. Make sure you heard everybody's views, and then come up with a plan which can be executed in a health and safety manner, which is very, very convenient for now, very, very applicable, and get across the line. So there was vision, very clear vision. There was very clear planning involved. There was very clear communication involved between the team. And so that was my very first experience of how I automatically came up and led the team. I wasn't told to lead the team on that experience. So the same thing applies now. We just take it across, and very important to have a very clear vision of where you want. It doesn't matter what it is. It's in a relationship, it's in your work, very clear vision, what you want to achieve, and be very, very clear about communicating exactly how you want to achieve it, and include other people's views in it. It's not just my way or the highway. You're going across this irrespective of how dangerous it is, but bring everybody's views in and come up to what you call consensus building. Consensus building is very important, and I learned that from a very early age. And so that was my first experience of having to be a leader.
I think all of us have experienced our school days. We at the times of confusions, there's always someone who emerges and says, leads by example, or takes the sort of bull by the horn and says, well, this is the way we're going to do it.
Yes.
Mahesh, now I was just thinking, you as playing the role of a chief executive, people must look up to you, but at the same time, there must be a little bit to sort of distance from you, because they're probably in awe of your position and that you're the proprietor of the business. Do you think that sometimes people are afraid of a leader because of their position? And if there is that sort of barrier, how can that barrier be removed? How can that sort of you embrace people who can come to you?
The thing is, in an organization, there's always a hierarchy from ground up, and there will always be people who are afraid to talk to chief executive. But our principle has always been keep it simple, keep it straight. And we do visits to our care homes where we interact with people from management, local management, to the cleaners. In my view, always being cleaners are just as important as the management running the establishment. Because if you have any of those functions not done, whether it's cleaning or cooking, then things won't work. So for us, it has always been simple. And I can safely say that wherever we go, we are well received, not because I'm a chief executive, because they know I'm pretty easy to talk to. And as I said, we keep it simple, and they're well respected. And if you keep the flexibility, patience with them, then they do respond. And that has always been our strategy, that keep it simple, and it works.
How do you avoid the ego emerging? Because, you know, some people have a lot of ego because of their position, and they demand that respect. How do you avoid that trap where you don't get carried away because who you are?
I think ego is always a problem with anything. But for me, it's always been simple. I don't think I've changed the last 20 years in what I've been doing. Is that, you know, if you did not know me, you wouldn't think I was a chief executive. You probably think I was one of the cleaners or whatever in the business. So to avoid ego, you always have to be humble enough that if you do make mistakes, to own up. If time to time you are aggressive with other people, then you have to own up and say, I'm sorry. You know, so long as you keep it, as I said, straight and without any ego, then things will work, and they usually do sort itself out. For me, ego can be many things, but for us, humbleness, straightforwardness, simplicity works.
Sanjay, I'd just like to sort of bring you into that conversation. Now, you must, as working for a big accountancy firm like Deloitte, must have encountered many people who had that ego problem. How did you cope with that?
I think, first of all, we need to understand the reason for the ego. That's absolutely critical. It is a byproduct of not checking ourselves. Ego comes in because we are comparing ourselves with others. We don't have enough self-respect. when we don't have self-respect, then we are looking for that respect from others. So that's where the ego has the window is open for the ego to come in. And we don't have enough introspection at looking within to be able to stop that ego. So yes, the ego will exist. The ego will exist and come, you will see it in surrounding environment. You will see it trying to get in within you, because now all of a sudden, oh, I'm a trustee of the Brahma Kumaris, or I've got, 200, 300 volunteers reporting to me, very large organization. But we need to go back. And that's one thing I've learned from what I would say my mentor at the Brahma Kumaris was Daddy Janki. She still is. She's taught me a lot. And there's one thing I've always learned from her is that trusteeship means you do not take ownership. It's you do your best of whatever you need to do, apply yourself as if it's yours. But once you've done that, you're just actually doing a task which has been assigned to you. In the same way, chief executive, that is a role playing. At that time, you're playing your role as the chief executive. You're having to interact with each other, but let's interact with respect with each other. Let's interact with love with each other. Let's interact with clarity, with absolute, honesty, because that's what people want nowadays. People want transparency. They want to be acknowledged. A smile doesn't cost us anything. It's free. Just, a smile breaks a lot of barriers. Mahesh mentioned he's got an open door policy. Nowadays, people don't even have an office. You having that aura that anybody's welcome to come and talk to me is, I think, just as important as having an open door policy. And I know Mahesh has that because I know him and his business quite well, and we've known each other for 20 years. So really, for me, it's very important that knowing that the ego exists, but ego can be dealt with and it needs to be managed, because otherwise what's happening is that as a chief executive or as a leader, you've got a vision, but that vision gets blurred. It gets blurred by your ego or other people's ego. And it's very important to put that aside and have this constant checking and introspection and say, am I doing this because of the betterment of myself, others, the organization? Why am I doing all this? Once you understand the motive and once you understand how you're getting there, you automatically park the ego on the side. The ego is constantly watching and saying, do I get an entry again? For example, like very basic things. With certain positions comes certain perks. If you are a chief executive, you might get the perk of an allocated car park when you go to work. The reality is, do you need that? Or do you need that as doing as part of your job? The more you manage all these perks, do I need it for my job? If I do, yes, I'll have it. But if I don't need it, it's just coming with a title, then you just go within and say, where do I need it? Why do I want to make myself so different from others? Let's be part of the team. Let's have exactly the same, access to things, perks. Yeah. And you will find that automatically a lot of the barriers will go. And the possibility of those egos trying to keep coming in is less. One of the egos people generally have as chief executives, I wasn't asked. I wasn't asked my opinion. I didn't know about it. Question is, did you need to know? That's the first question. Why do you need to know? If you needed to know, then you should have set up a system that allows you to know. And often it's to do with, you need to look at your management structure around you. Mahesh talked about it, having the right people around you. I'm a great believer of that. When in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years, I think, we've been doing some fundamental changes at the way the Brahma Kumaris charity is managed. And what we're doing is empowering people so that they can make decisions at the right level. We have head of units, whether it's legal, finance, property, UK centers, etc. And those heads are very clear about their responsibility and what level they can make decisions on. And then what they have to take back to management so that it's a risk managed approach. If you have that, then you've automatically managed the ego that I need to know. Or why wasn't I asked to do this? Yeah. Were you actually, is that on the chart that they needed to tell you? They didn't need to tell you, they don't need to tell you. Change the chart. It's as simple as that.
I remember when I first came to the Brahma Kumaris in July 95, I didn't know anything about the Brahma Kumaris. I didn't know who was who. And so because I didn't know anyone, I could approach everyone irrespective of their title or their position. And I found that people were very approachable. And I thought, this is great. But then I discovered, oh, they are so-and-so, as Mahesh says, every organization has a hierarchy. And then suddenly I thought, wow, I was in the presence of, so there was a little bit of sort of holding back. But then when I felt comfortable with myself, I found it very easy to communicate with the same people. It was amazing how my approach changed when I first came, which was absolutely, you're my equal, I'm your equal. And then suddenly, there's a little bit of a distance because now I realize you've been practicing this for X many years and this is your position. And then it changed again when I thought, actually, it's me that's creating the barrier.
Yeah.
So I come to you, Mahesh. Now you must have found in your own life, your approach to leadership must have changed. What are the things have you learned in your life that makes a great leader?
Well, I think over the last 20 years since I've been practicing meditation, things have changed in many ways. And for example, being aware of the self, who you are, etc. And the powers that Brahma Kumaris teach, like, whether you can judge somebody or not judge somebody, or whether you should keep your mouth shut, etc. And these things help you shape what you do in business as well. And for example, I'm more relaxed now than perhaps I was 10, 15 years ago, not because of anything else. Time itself is a healer in many ways. But for me, the issue has been that, you should have courage in what you do. And if I keep it that way, then I think it works for me. So over the years, I've been more straightforward in my role in what I can do, I can't do, which perhaps earlier on I wasn't. When I started the business from 30 years ago, I was very focused, had a lot of energy, a lot of things that weren't going well. But, the leader focuses on these things and doesn't think going back, it thinks going forward, because back means, disaster. Going forward means salvation. And so that was the start of the journey, if you like. And so over the years, it has tremendously helped me focusing on how things can be made simple and can be more effective. I think if I can say so, I'm probably one of the leaders in our care sector. But, I keep it so low key that it works for us pretty well. So I think if over a period, I think if you do things right and improve on it and adjust and continuously strive for perfection, then people respect you for that. It works well for us.
I took up building a few years ago because after taking retirement from my previous role as an educational manager, I found that I was very sweet with people. I was very kind, and they loved me. They really did. And I thought, I was trying to put into practice everything that I had been taught through self-respect and giving respect to others. But what I discovered, that people were actually taking advantage of me. And then I had to sort of come to a stage where I became very assertive. So how do you find the balance between, being nice and approachable, but then at the same time, when you have to be firm as your role that you play in leadership?
See, every situation is different for a start. And you're right that if you're too soft and too too forgiving, then they will take advantage of you. That is where you need to have barriers, you need to have goals, you need to have a focus, and where individual homes, individual businesses can go. So for me, it's is law and love. Where things don't work, then you have to put down the law, saying this is what we expect. And I've not only run care homes. I probably was the largest operator in prosthetics. Probably one of the largest dental laboratory business in the UK. And there's always been we've had issues, but on the whole, where you are focused and where you are taken for a ride, this question is how far is a piece of string. There comes a time when you will put a stop to it. And people know that after a while that, this is how far they can go. So for me, it's straightforward. So long as it works and helps both parties, then it works well. So long as it doesn't work for us, but then you have to be very careful, because if you don't do it, it's going to ruin whatever you have established. So for us, it's been pretty straightforward. We're kind, we're considerate, we are, forgiving, but at the same time, they have to deliver as well. It's a two-way street, isn't it? That either you perform or you don't perform. And being nice and sweet is nice. Giving tollies every day is fantastic. But if you're not careful, you'll end up with indigestion. Similarly, we just got to be, for me, it's pretty straightforward. My office is open, but at the same time, certain things have to be done and they have to do it. I have also helped a lot of people get into business. I've helped quite a lot of people get out of trouble as well. But it's, again, sometimes that these people are just taking you for a ride. So you just have to understand that. And so long as you know that, then you can work towards putting that barrier between you and the other person.
Sanjay, you must have done a lot of audits, given a lot of advice to people in a variety of sectors. Now, when someone is doing something wrong and it's wrong, how have you sort of pointed this out without hurting someone's feeling?
I think it's to do with the way you approach things. Very important, because people hate auditors. They're not. Some hate. Some actually very scared of auditors, because it's an auditor often comes and checks your work. You don't like that. You feel uncomfortable, and the most important thing is then to make sure that they do not see you as a person who's coming to intrude in their space. You're there to help them. If you go with that attitude that you're there to help them, and it's very important not to be an authority then, not to try and be authoritative about things, because then you have that relationship of, it's like a policing job that's going on. Very important for that barrier to go between you and your client, or you and anybody, whoever you're trying to deal with. That barrier has to disappear. So to melt that barrier, it's very important to understand that humility is critical. For you to be humble about what you do, you're there to help. And then when you have that awareness that I want to help you, but you've got to allow me to help you. And then comes the trust. Do they trust you that you're not going to grass them up? At the end of the day, is that your reporting function is to a third party. So it's very important is for them to be made aware of the impact of anything. And if there is a way of ensuring that things can be improved and corrected, be there with that. People have to trust you. Trust is a big, big factor in any leadership role. It doesn't matter if it's husband and wife, brother or sister, mom and dad, kids. The trust is the most important factor. And it's so important to have. And one of the things that I actually do with my own, whatever I do with my clients, within the Brahma Kumaris, etc., is I create what I call a circle of trust around me. If you're in that circle, you're trusted and you are expected to trust and not do anything. If you don't, you will be given a chance, obviously, if you don't perform according to the trust. But if you repeatedly keep breaching that trust, then you get out of that circle of trust. then I'll treat you very differently. I'm not going to treat you in a bad way, but you won't enter that circle of trust where you have access to basically everything. So that's the sort of approach that I take. But it's very important that people need to feel that they can trust you, and they need to feel loved. They need to feel respected. And once you do that, you will find that those barriers start breaking.
I just want to change tack now from an outside organization, but more for families, personal relationships, because you may play the role of an advisor, and you're playing a significant role in informing and telling people how they should perform. But when it comes to home, does that continue, or does your persona change?
Okay, for me, I'll take one step back. I'm a student of Brahma Kumaris first, before I'm a trustee of Brahma Kumaris. In the same way, when I go to listen to the regular discourses that the Brahma Kumaris give, at that time I'm a student. But at the time I'm performing my task of the trusteeship, I'm a trustee and I have to wear that hat. So in the same way at home, it's very important that people do not wear that chief executive hat and go there, because you're not a chief executive of anybody there. These are your family. This is your the people who you live with, you're close to, you share things with. And at that time, you're a different role. The prime minister of this country, has to play a different role when he's the prime minister. But when he gets home, he is a normal human being. He's not, that hat of prime minister is gone. And I remember again, I would quote Daddy Janki here again. She said once to me that, I'm a student like anybody else. I am not the daddy. I am not the chief executive of the Brahma Kumaris. I'm a student like anybody else, and I'm here to learn. And when we have that attitude of learning and that attitude of sharing, automatically our relationships with the family setup works very well. And understand that different people have different needs within the family. And that's why it's very important to take the pulse within the family. And I'm sure Mahesh can share a lot more about that, because he lives within a family setup with kids, etc. I used to live on my own, but recently I have my nieces with me. So a lot of adjustments and a lot of learning that goes on, and you've got to take the pulse. And what does somebody want? Not everybody wants the same thing. If somebody's thirsty, no point giving them a bar of chocolate, however lovely the chocolate is. They want water. Whereas at the same time, if somebody wants love, no point giving them respect. Give them what they need. So it's very important. It's like we're a bit like one of these maintenance people who go around, you're in the building trade, this lovely belt, and they've got 20 different tools in there. Use the right tool for the right thing. You don't use a hammer for something which is delicate. So for me, relationships is very much like that.
Mahesh, now you have, as Sanjay says, got a sort of family, and you interact with an extended family. So how do you sort of avoid continuing playing the role that you play outside? And when you come home, how can you still be a leader, but in a very sort of discreet way, without stepping on people's toes?
It's quite simple. That at the office, you're the chief executive. At the home, you're a father, husband, brother, etc. And for me, it's I'm probably got a role here of the chief dishwasher. I hope Alka's not listening.
I'm sure Alka's listening.
So, it's quite simple as that. So at home, you have a different role, and you're not a chief executive. In fact, Alka, my wife, and I work together. So we're almost 24/7 together. So, it's at the office, we are business partners. At home, we are husband, wife, and the family. So we have blended in quite well. Things seem to work. In fact, Alka is also a student of Brahma Kumaris, which makes it a little easier. And so we have very little dispute on that front. Obviously, I have different opinions on a lot of things, but it seems to work nicely for us. And I am quiet and less aggressive, and the other half is a very good cook, let's say.
Really put.
And she's a chartered accountant as well, so it works quite nicely. So, interaction with different roles it's easy once you don't have that ego part in it. And if you're quite humble about it and straightforward, it seems to work for us.
Now, how easy is it to switch roles? Most of us are probably used to playing a particular role in whatever field it is, whether it's in business or at home, and someone else is giving you the orders. How easy is it to adapt, or is there a sort of a barrier that I need to cross?
No, it's not difficult to adapt. It's not that. So long as I said earlier that you have common goals, common aspirations, then there'll be ups and downs, and you have to take orders. Just because you're chief executive doesn't mean you don't take orders. There are a lot more orders coming from different angles, whether it's the regulators or whether it's 101 other people deciding, whether it's the banks. So you do take instructions, you do take note of what they say, but you have to work within your limit. You have to adjust to the situation, and it works nicely. That so long as with the intent of whatever people are saying is to betterment of the self and the business you run. So that's the way I see it. And for me, it's not any different than whether I'm working in an office or working at home. In the office, there are different people you're working with. In the house, you're different lots of individuals, but no issues.
I was working with a client just recently, and we were trying to finalize the door furniture, etc. And he runs his own business and is a very successful businessman. So I said, Asif, look, could you decide on the door? And he says, just hang on, I better call the boss. So his son was there, and he knew straight away who the boss was. Sometimes there is a role reversal, isn't there?
Absolutely. Not sometimes, a lot of times. The roles are intertwined. There are joint decisions to make on a lot of things, because you're joint partners. There's lots of decisions you need to consult. But there are also times where you, as we discussed earlier, that does everybody need to know everything about everything? And sometimes you do miss things, and as a result, you either get told off, but you just have to accept it, that you're not perfect. You're doing the best you can.
So, Sanjay, how do you deal with someone who's another person who's also naturally displaying their leadership qualities, and you're also a natural leader, and sometimes there's a little bit of tension, bit of conflict? How do you cope with that, and what is the solution so one doesn't become subservient to others, but also at the same time doesn't come across bossy?
That's an interesting scenario, which you will find very often in boardrooms, to be honest, because you've got a lot of people highly qualified sitting there and discussing matters. Everybody's got an opinion, obviously, and everybody's opinion is right. Everybody's, from their perspective, they're right. And often what you need is an icebreaker in those situations. Very often, the best way to deal with it is to diffuse the tension around the area. In whatever decision you're taking. Some people might think, oh, you're taking this too lightly, etc. But that's the way I deal with things. I just literally diffuse the tension, understand the other person's perspective. That's very important, because everybody who's saying something, they've got a reason why they're bringing it up. Try and understand this other person's perspective. And there's one thing, again, that is taught at the Brahma Kumaris, which I've tried to apply to my life, is look at the specialities of others as well. It's very important to understand and try and appreciate each other's speciality. And once we do that, I'm not saying that you will always come up with the same answers to everything, but somebody who has a speciality in certain sector and another person has a speciality in another sector, you try and bring everybody's speciality from various places, from various avenues, for the benefit of the the task, whether it's an organization, whether it's the family, whether it's your own self. Very important to take different perspectives. And then if it's what you call, it's a technical term used in business called goal congruence. It is, we're all working towards the same goal. Once everybody knows that this is the goal, then our personal differences have to be put on the side to make sure that, in this case, if there is a committee, that the organization doesn't suffer. And for that, if it means differences in opinion, it's actually healthy to have differences of opinion. It's very healthy, as long as it doesn't turn into a friction, and there is a way of diffusing the tension surrounding it. And generally, that's achievable. And that's why you have what you call a democratic system within most organizations, where if there are 12 people, it's the majority that go through certain things, or there's certain things that requires more than majority. And sometimes you have a person who is often the chairperson. If it's 6 and 6, will have the voting right. But that's in an organizational setup. But in a personal setup, is the way I deal with it is recognize that the other person has got a view, and the view is just as valid as mine. It could be different, but we need to look at what is best for everybody. That's most important.
I just want to bring in the aspect of what you're doing in terms of your own personal study. You say you're a student of the Brahma Kumaris. So obviously, spirituality is important to you. Truth, values are very important to you. Can you still practice that even when you're playing the role of a leader?
I think that's even more important in the role of a leader, because of the role of a leader, if you're trying to lead by example, and again, there are some leaders who don't necessarily feel that that's the need for them. They don't have to practice what they preach. But there are some leaders who want to lead by example. And you need a set of values that it's very clear from the outset. That's how you, either people will know about it because of the way they deal with you, or they've been dealing with you for a long time, or you have to put it from the very outset. One of my most important value that I always use is transparency. So I'm always there to explain the reasoning behind why I'm doing something. And very importantly is there's got to be a level playing field where everybody feels that justice is done. The worst thing you can have in an organization if people feel that it's unjustified, whatever you've decided. And so in my, whatever I've, and that comes from what I've learned from the Brahma Kumaris, is respect them. Yeah. Be very, very clear in the way you're thinking, because what you think internally is what is going to reflect in your actions and words. And that's why we spend a lot of time in meditation and practice that. Because if you're calm generally, and if your thoughts are collected, they're very, they are being checked, and you're thinking in the right manner, in a positive way, you will attract and display the right vibrations, the right feelings. And generally, that's what then people will sense. Sometimes you say, yeah, it's all very good what you're saying. It does make sense intellectually, but something is not feeling right about it because the person's motive might not be right. So it's very, very important that we start from the right thought, because then the right seed is sown. And then when you sow the right seed, and for that is very important in terms of the army, positioning, vision, whenever you have a vision or whenever you're trying to defend yourself, it's very important to be positioned in the right place. That's why you will find most countries, especially in the UK, and I've seen that in India as well, they have castles, but the castles are always on the highest point in the country or on the hill, because they have to actually defend themselves. So if they're highest point, they defend. So in the same way, if our energy level is very high, we're automatically defending ourselves against the negative energy which might be out there. So, but not only we're defending ourselves, we are actually giving those positivities out there. So that transformed the way you interact with people, your relationship with them, the way they perceive you, the way they trust you. And it makes a big difference to the outcome of a lot of situations.
Mahesh, you've also been practicing meditation now for 20 odd years. How has that helped you to become a better person that you are at home and at work?
Let's start with the journey of Brahma Kumaris. When I first was invited to go to Brahma Kumaris, I thought it was a waste of time. So somebody did tell me that, okay, maybe a waste of time, hear what we say and take what you can or what you think is useful to you. So that was my journey with the Brahma Kumaris. And over the years, practicing meditation, listening to, what we call Murli, or, positive, listening to positive ideas, thoughts, and whatever that applies to us, we inculcate. And you find that you have a different vision of the world outside. Everybody, as Sanjay said, they're playing their own part in different ways. And so it's, everybody's playing a part at a particular time according to the situation they're in. So we learn to accept that. We learn to accept that we're in a journey. We learn to accept that, everything is good as best it can be at a particular time. And so for us, for me, especially as I'm understanding more and practicing meditation even more, is self-realization and understanding that, regardless of the situation outside, I should be stable within myself. I should be able to control my various faculties. I should be able to control my anger. I should be able to pass positive vibrations outside. And so all these little things that help the household, helps the office, helps the general business, and all the people who come to meet us. And they find that if we are calm and positive within, it spreads around. As Sanjay said, if you pass in positive thoughts and continuously living in that, it sort of radiates. And radiate means, people do respond in similar light.
They say in leadership, some are born into greatness, some are thrust into greatness, and others become great. And I think the Brahma Kumaris have got an example for all of them. So I would say the founder, Brahma Baba, definitely born into greatness. And yet, Daddy Prakash Mani, when Brahma Baba passed away, was thrust into greatness. And then when she passed away, there was Daddy Janki. And I think Daddy Janki has become great. And what qualities do you think that they brought in to the roles of a leadership? What skills did they bring that we can also use for ourselves? Sanjay, do you want to start with that one?
Well, I actually love the way you put it. For me, Brahma Baba was an amazing guy who he had the most difficult task out of the three, because at the time when he started the organization back in the 1937, women didn't have the same rights as men at that time, especially in India. And he put women at the front of the organization. That takes a lot of courage. And for me, what he did inspired me to be courageous, to do something which is swimming against the flow at the time. Amazing guy. So I learned courage from that. And I then take that courage into whatever I do. If I feel that I can't do something, there is no such thing that you can't do. What is important is to have the courage, because he had the courage that he'll be able to do it with the help of the Supreme, because the Supreme is there to help him. Very important, that connection, because where do you get that courage from? As a leader, you need some energy, because challenges do come to you as a leader, and you need to constantly keep energy. If you do not keep your energy level high, what happens is you're not helping others to keep their energy level high. So it's very important that to be able to do that, you need some source of energy yourself. The meditation which Brahma Kumaris teach, to connect with the Supreme, that is a constant way of keeping yourself energized so that you can perform at your peak level. Daddy Prakashmani, what I learned from her again was, I still remember my first meeting with her when I went to Mount Abu in March 1990. That was my first trip there. And here's a very graceful old lady sitting in the courtyard of what you call Pandav Bhavan, sitting there. You've probably seen it yourself, in the armchair, in the chair, and her hair is all out there and letting it dry. And that's at sort of 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And she is the person who is responsible for over 110 countries of Brahma Kumaris. And totally, no attitude of saying, I'm the boss. Just there, member of the family. She's an elder of the family trying to help. So I learned from her is what you call that in Hindi, it's called nimit. It's called an instrument soul. We're an instrument to be able to do whatever we do. Let us not forget who gave us that opportunity. Let's not forget that. We're here as an instrument, and let's play that part beautifully. And then with Daddy Janki, what I learned from her, and she was, person I had most amount of dealing with, one thing she's always taught me, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible as a leader. And you need all these three qualities. But yet, she was very humble. She never sort of blew her own trumpet saying that, always used to say, he's there with me and he's allowing me to do. Because one of the things she told me, and when I started my own business journey back in 1990, started my own business in 1996, but my journey in the business was in 1990. And she said, success is your birthright. Live it. And since then, never looked back.
You definitely haven't. I'll have to endorse that, Sanjay.
Thank you very much.
What have you taken from these three types of leaders of the Brahma Kumaris, and what have you sort of implemented from them in your life as well?
See, the three individual, Brahma Baba is a pioneer of Brahma Kumaris organization. He was a leader in many ways, and always will be. That his focus was different compared to the second and the third. So he was alone, fighting many corners, but he never gave up. And he was there because he was with the power of truth. What he was doing was the power of truth. And with that, he had one thought, that to create a better world. And he had 300 old young ladies, and he actually taught them lots of skills which were useful to them in later life. He actually made them more soul conscious with the power of God. So on his passing in 1969, when the baton was passed to Dadi Prakashmani, it was a different role. And her role then was to pass the message of Brahma Baba and Shiv Baba to the world. And so the organization really expanded after that. From India, it expanded throughout the world. And when the baton passed to Dadi Janki, again, it was a different role of sustaining the yagya and encouraging and expanding it further. So what I take is that, if what you are doing is beneficial to the self, to the wider community, then you have to go ahead and you have to do it, because it will bear fruit sooner or later. So that's my take from Brahma Baba. With Dadi Prakashmani, is that you are a custodian. You are not the owner, you're the custodian, and expand it further. So take it to the next level and expand it the best you can, and so long as you can cope. That's what you did. And with Dadi Janki, it was a different role. When Dadi Janki, when she was in London, she created a structure which Sanjay and I are part of, the trustees of Brahma Kumaris. And she actually was pioneer in setting up a system that we follow presently. that there's no one person in charge of anything really. So it's all, we are partners, if you like, in that. And so I take from that that, with the team I work with, they're part and parcel of the organization, they're part and parcel of me. That, for me to be successful, I need them, and they need the company to do what their role they play. So that's the sort of thing I take from the three of them.
So generally, obviously, they've been very inspirational leaders, and they demonstrate it in a very practical way, and very humble. Definitely, very, very people who acted with humility. Are there any others who have inspired you that you think, I've learned so much from them? Sanjay?
Within the Brahma Kumaris or outside?
Generally, it can be Brahma Kumaris or the world outside. You mentioned Mahatma Gandhi.
Mahatma Gandhi, definitely, he lived the part. I would say within the Brahma Kumaris, Dadi Janki definitely was one person who has shaped my life. So I've got a lot of things I've learned from her. But then there's also, there was Ramesh Bhai, who was the managing trustee of Brahma Kumaris in India. And I had a lot of connections with him. And I used to deal with him because I look after the international elements of Brahma Kumaris outside India, and he deals with India. So we always used to connect about finance, etc. And one of the things which I found a little bit tricky at first to deal with was, on the one hand, you're a student of Brahma Kumaris, and then when you're trying to make the changes, you're dealing with the same teachers who are effectively your seniors within the spiritual setup. So on the one hand, on the financial administrative side, you're playing a role as sort of an advisor or somebody with a little bit of authority to the same people who are teaching you during the day on a spiritual side. So that can be a little bit tricky. So he made it very clear to me, and I asked him about the way he deals with it. Is that, and he said, at the time when I'm playing that role, I'm the person in charge. But at the time where they are the teacher and I'm listening as a student, they're in charge. So respect each other's position, respect each other's role is very important. And he also, one of the things I learned was about part of being a leader, or part of being somebody within a system, you have to make sure people have zeal and enthusiasm. Because within the Brahma Kumaris, nobody gets paid. In a work out there, it would be unbelievable that none of the volunteers are paid. So what do you do to make sure that they still want to do it? It's not a must, because they want to take money home to be able to survive. So it's very important to make sure that people have zeal and enthusiasm for whatever they're doing in their lives, and they need to see the personal benefit in their life. And for me, that's one thing which has been taught to me, is leadership out there. And that's one thing which was very clear for me from the outset. Leadership out there, you can do it, but you've got to be a leader within, leader for yourself. And that's one thing that I was told by Ramesh Bhai.
Thank you for that. It was a very wonderful sharing. Mahesh, who's inspired you, and what have you taken from them?
Well, there's a number of them. With Ramesh Bhai, he was obviously one of the leaders of the organization, and he was very thorough in accounting and law. For me, he was also a friend that, I went to see cricket with him. So he was quite a different person than seeing somebody in the office. So we have, he was, and that applies to a number of them, that in the office, they are the bosses, if you like. But outside, they are also your friends. So for me, that the take there is that, as we started earlier, whatever role you play with dignity, respect, and then once you finish that position, then you are playing a different role, and it's a friendship, harmony, etc. So for me, with Ramesh Bhai, it's been very interactive. Well, in fact, I've been interactive with Nirvar Bhai as well. I'm a co-trustee with him of the Global Hospital. So we have a lot of interaction on there with Pratap Bhai. So, but I just take this in my stride. So I don't sort of say you are higher or lower than me. You are what you are, and we are where we are, and we just got to work together. So for me, the inspiration has been that, so long as you accept the role you are playing, so long as you don't accept anybody's higher than you, they're playing a different role, and then it works well for me. So that's what I take. Of course, I had a lot of interaction with a lot of other senior brothers, too many to name, but they all have different specialities. For example, my friend Atham Bhai in the kitchen, he's very humble in many ways. Then there are some fiery brothers who actually play a bigger role, a subtle role, and to keep things ticking. So for me, it's quite a good journey.
So who can be a leader, and when can they be a leader? So when is it time to sort of say, yeah, I need to take responsibility, and who can do that? So who and when?
See, anybody can be a leader, but the question is, how can be effective leader? So leader is any position that they like to choose. On a football pitch, you have 11 players, but there's only one captain. They all play different roles, but they need everyone to succeed. Similarly, to me, a person who can inspire, who can take the team with them, can be a leader. Somebody who can see a positive and go for it in a situation where it's dire, then that can be a leader. Lots of times you find there's doom and gloom around, but there's always one spark within that which can take the team across. You hear a lot of stories where, there were one positive person there who actually turn things around. Because in a cricket match, that, you have, again, 11 players, but you need one little bright spark who can be the leader on the day and change the position. So to keep it simple, anybody can be a leader, but it's a different role they play. The wife or can be a leader in the kitchen, which we can't be, but so that's a different role there. So to me, anybody can be a leader. To be an effective leader, then you have to make effort and persevere to put your point of view to lead.
Sanjay,
from my perspective, I think that the title of tonight says it all. It's an art.
Yeah,
leadership is an art. Leadership is not a science. You don't get taught the exact way of leading. Yeah. Follow rule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. That's science. And then you get an outcome of it. And art is something you develop. Some of it might be innate within you, but you've got to nurture it. And a leader is anyone that sees the best in themselves, the best in others, the best in the world, and the best in things that they can't even visualize. And God, this is missing nowadays. I just wish we had more leaders who could see beyond their borders. We would not be suffering so much from COVID nowadays if people weren't just thinking about their own little area. You need leaders who think beyond their borders, and anybody can be that. Anybody who starts a change cycle, whether it's within, whether it's outside, whether it's organization, whether it's the family, they are leaders, because leaders constantly change. And leaders, most importantly, nurture people. They make themselves and others grow. A leader who tries and hold others back at their own benefit is not a leader. Got to put others forward. And that is something I've learned a lot within the Brahma Kumaris.
Actually, I've seen that in the world today. That a lot of the younger generation, they are really taking matters into their own hands. I'm just thinking of Greta Thunberg. She's 16-year-old. I don't know. I think she's 17. By the time she was on the world stage, she was addressing people who were many times older, her, more experienced. And yet, one thing I've observed is that she was very forthright. She was very honest. She was very clear, and she was fearless. All the sort of attributes that you've mentioned. And I've worked with children with the Brahma Kumaris as well. And I love children because they inspire me so much. You know, one of the reasons is their honesty.
Yeah.
They're so sincere and they don't hold anything back. They're very direct. So what can we learn from others that we need to sort of pay attention to?
Personally, I think we always need to pick skills or virtues from others. And one of the most important one needed in the current climate is to be grounded. Because there's a lot of, in the current climate, leaders need to be resilient, need to be grounded. Because we live in a very different environment at the moment. It's not the normal, everything is rosy, it's a beautiful world out there. There's challenges in every field of life, whether it's because of the pandemic, whether it's because of Brexit in the UK, whether it's inflation rising, whether there are issues with the various aspects in people's relationship. We are being challenged in every corner. And it's very important for us, that's what you call self-managing leadership, is to be able to understand what sort of leader do I want to be within. And that then helps others. But for me, currently, if I want to inspire, I need to be grounded and I need to be resilient because there's a lot of tests. And one of the best way of dealing with that is to just, a bit like you've got a boat or a ship in a very choppy water. The way to make it stable is you drop the anchor. We need to drop the anchor within. And it doesn't then matter what's around me. As long as I'm in the right position, I've got the right vision, I'll be resilient.
Mahesh?
Well, Sanjay summed it up quite nicely, that, so long as you are focused within, so long as you are stable within, you can be a nice leader. So long as you have the vision of taking the situation in a positive way, then that could be quite a way of looking at the situation. As time is going by, as you've seen over the last 2, 3, 4 years, lots and lots of challenges are upon us now and rising continuously. COVID for the last 15, 18 months have played havoc. Things have changed in the world. Only 15 months ago, you wouldn't have thought people wearing masks and walking around the streets. You know, thought bank robbers have arrived. Now every second person is wearing a mask. So that sort of situations are changing and changing very fast. So in a changing world, you have to see and adapt to that. And so long as you are focused and willing to adapt to the situation, you'll survive and thrive and be a nice person to be with. And so long as you have that attitude, then things will work for you. And, situations are going to get easier, but we have to be stable. And for me, stability is cornerstone of everything I do.
Just a request to the audience, if anyone has any comments or questions, please post them on chat and I will address them to our panelists. So coming sort of full circle, give me the essence, what makes a leader? And not just an ordinary leader, but a great leader.
A great leader would be humble first. Humble, humility has got to be there. And the speciality the person has got, he can share that with others. He can then imbibe those qualities in others. So whatever he's got, or he or she's got, that is good, he's prepared to share. What is not so good, he's prepared to change. What he or she can do as a good leader is be a good listener and be part of them. And so long as you're part of them, then you can make the change. Then, we as all of us in Brahma Kumaris, we were different individuals, same individual, different vision, different perspective. And now our vision, perspective is quite different. And every person is a friend of ours, if you see what I mean. And every person has to be looked upon that. And so for me, to be a good leader has to be, you have to have a vision where you would like to take your boat. And if you have that vision, obstacles will come, you overcome the obstacles, find ways to do it, and then you reach your destination. That for me is a quality of a good leader.
Thank you, Mahesh. Sanjay?
Great leader who has absolute clarity about where they want to be, where take others along with them on that journey, make sure it's an enjoyable journey, make sure that they are resilient, they are stable, and very important to be able to do that is to make sure that from within they are connected. They are connected with an energy that constantly replenishing them so that they can actually bring zeal and enthusiasm in not just their lives, but in the lives of all their colleagues, their fellow friends, their relatives, and anybody they work with. So it's absolutely important that it's not a solo journey. It's a journey of taking everybody with us, but an enjoyable one. However choppy the waters are, when you're on the cruise, you never feel it.
Just getting comments on chat. Someone just praising you, Sanjay, says they've worked with you and they found you a great mentor. And people are saying very insightful knowledge. Thank you for such humble and intelligent speakers. So sadly, we have to draw this evening to a close. And I'm sure many of us have taken a lot of inspiration from our two speakers. So I kindly request, Sanjay, if you can take us into that energy that you were talking about, that sort of higher energy, okay?
Sure. Are we finishing with an announcement, or we're finishing with the meditation?
We'll put the announcements after your
after the meditation. Perfect.
We'll put it on a slide screen so people can know next week's.
That's great. I will just guide you through some thoughts and request everybody to be seated comfortably and enjoy the next few minutes. And you can follow my thoughts, or you can be on your own journey. And I request that you sit very comfortably, moving the energy away from your legs, your hand, the rest of your body, and be seated and be comfortable in the middle of the forehead as that person who has very clear vision of what they want to achieve. Your intellect, your mind, is like a TV screen. Visualize whatever you want. Visualize the current, how you want to change it, a better future, invoke it, send it in the atmosphere, and empower it with positive energy. Empower it with the energy within you, the energy that you never knew existed, the powers that you have, which have been lying latent, the power of truth, the power to change, the power to adjust to situations, to change negative into positive, to change bad into good. Let that emerge. Let that come in the forefront. Your mind thinks, your intellect will discern what's right, what's wrong. So to be able to discern what feels good, what feels bad, empower that intellect. Empower it by recognizing the energy lies within. And to keep that energy constantly lighting like a flame, constantly ignited, constantly acting like a lighthouse for everybody to be in the right journey, moving forward, full of zeal and enthusiasm, on an enjoyable journey, let us connect with the supreme energy, the energy that is in abundance. And all we are is a trustee, an instrument to make myself better first. By making myself better, I encourage others to improve, to make changes to things that they might want to change, but I've never had the power to do so. I've never had the desire to do so. I stay within, coming back to the awareness of the body, and in total relaxation, Om Shanti, which is greetings of peace.
So on behalf of the Brahma Kumaris, Leicester and Harrow, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers, Sanjay and Mahesh, for their wonderful sharing and a lot of positive feedback from our participants. So thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts on the art of leadership skills. And also we'd like to thank those who joined us through Zoom and the webcast. So thank you for your participation. And we hope to see you very shortly. So have a wonderful evening, but we will leave you information of our next talk, which is the art of communication.